Hey guys, Isabel here. Welcome back to Reeled In. So guys, I've been watching episodes 2 and 3 of Loki nonstop, and I've collected all my thoughts, and I've got another analysis video for you. This video will cover episodes, a little bit of 1, 2, and 3. So spoilers for those episodes. So starting off in episode 2 of Loki, we get another hint about Miss Minutes' character. At first we thought she was sort of just a television program, but now she seems to be sort of a sentient thing.
Are you recording or are you alive?
Sort of both.
Like, she can definitely pass between existing in real time in the real world, as well as diving back into, I suppose, a computer code as she travels from real time talking to Loki and dives into the computer, which leads me to believe she has a higher purpose and power than just teaching the new TVA members, as well as explaining what the TVA is to variants. I think Miss Minutes might be up there with the Timekeepers. I'm not sure exactly her power, but I think she is one of the top tier levels of the TVA. And I don't think she's all as sweet and innocent as she wants us to believe. So, in this episode, one of the things I found interesting is that once one of the branched timelines reaches past a certain point, which would be the red line on their temp pad devices, is that it can't be pruned once it passes the red line. Meaning, if the TVA show up after the branched timeline is past its peak, there's nothing they can do, which leads me to think to the future, especially Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and how this actually sets up what's probably going to happen in that movie. And I'll talk about this again at the end when I talk about the end of episode 3. So stay tuned. And when they're in the tent trying to figure out what happened to C20, Loki's quote about exploiting people's weaknesses by listening.
Because my people are by nature gullible fools, a trait that I, the god of mischief, exploited time and time again simply by listening.
Ties into maybe what he's doing with Sylvie in episode 3. And I'll also get back to that. And something that I would really love to know is, who is this other analyst that supposedly works for the TVA?
You're not the only analyst working for me.
I'm not sure if he's going to be important, but I have a few thoughts on it. So Mobius seems to be the good cop of the group, and I wonder if this other analyst is sort of the bad cop. We get a hint into who this other analyst could be, and that's the pen with the words Franklin D. Roosevelt High School on it. I'm not exactly sure what those mean, but it seems to be a clue as to the analyst's identity. My other thought is that it could be a second Mobius. Mobius's full name is Mobius M. Mobius, which is kind of odd because there's 2 Mobiuses in one, if you think about it. I'm not too sure about that theory. It's just kind of quickly went through my brain, and I stuck with it. I'm sure we'll have to wait further into the series to figure it out, because we all know Marvel doesn't mention things like that as just a filler. Everything usually means something. And another hint for this is that when Mobius places his drink down on the side table, there are already rings there, and Ravonna makes Mobius use a coaster. And Mobius gets confused, saying that those rings were already there before he got there. Meanwhile, Ravonna says they're from Mobius himself, and Mobius doesn't seem to remember this, or that he was the one who did it. So,
Mobius.
What? Those rings are already there.
And they're all from you.
and I think probably the most important dialogue in this episode is when Loki gives Mobius his theory about how if you end up in a timeline of an apocalypse, you can do anything you want, but the branching timeline won't branch any further because that period is going to be destroyed.
And I could do anything I wanted, and it would never matter. It wouldn't go against the dictates of the timeline because everything and everyone around you is destined for imminent destruction. Then nothing that I say or do will matter.
But I find this a little bit confusing, especially with his metaphor of Asgard. Because yes, Surtur destroyed the planet, but Asgard, the society, was destroyed by Thanos a person. So in the 2012 timeline, the destruction theoretically never happened. Plus, the Tesseract is a contingency, seeing as Loki stole it before Sutar destroyed the planet. So Loki can do anything except steal an Infinity Stone that would have otherwise been annihilated by the demon. So say that Loki stopped the other Loki from stealing the Tesseract on Asgard. That would have to mean that the Tesseract would have been destroyed on Asgard by Sutar, and therefore would have changed the events of Infinity War and even the rest of the people of Asgard, because Thanos would not have killed everyone because there was no stone to get. And although little nuances like that should be taken into consideration, I elaborate more on this whole apocalypse theory further when I talk about episode 3. Because I think while watching episode 3, I actually understood what Loki was talking about. But testing Loki's theory, him and Mobius go to Pompeii in 79 AD when the volcano erupts, which was a very fun scene, and I honestly would have liked a little bit more screen time of this as well. The trailer sort of led me to believe that we would see Loki kind of either causing mischief or maybe even causing some of the big, I guess you could say, apocalypse events himself. But it seems he was just testing his own theory, so I kind of feel like we were a bit misled on Loki's whole role within this. But we do have 3 more episodes, I believe, so perhaps that will happen. So now they're going to the future into Roxcart, and they find C20, who is muttering, "It's real." It's real. Which I think is a very strange thing for her to mutter at first. I think we're supposed to believe she's kind of lost her marbles, but I think there's another reason for this, which I will get back to when I talk about episode 3. But C20 also reveals that she told the Loki variant where the timekeepers reside.
I gave it away. The timekeepers, where they are. I gave it away, how to find them.
So it makes me wonder, do all the TVA know where the timekeepers are? Or did this Loki variant break some sort of mind block? Okay, so I'm trying not to reveal the name just yet. So this whole paragraph might get confusing. But another thing I found interesting is that when Loki and the other Loki variant, who keeps switching between bodies, is talking to Loki, there's a very quick scene where the Loki variant as Randy is talking to Loki, and they pass by one of the temp pads and charges, and there are some hands that seem to be working on it. But they're doing this as Randy and Loki are talking. So instead of this Loki variant being able to jump into bodies as I and I think others thought, I think this variant can sort of mind control because the variant actual body remains separate from the mind and other body of the other person. So the time variant Loki can still stay outside of the other person's body and work on the charges, because at first it definitely looked like more than one person was in on this whole thing, and I was very confused. Also, take notice of B-15's very fearful reaction when she wakes up from being sort of mind controlled. I'll also get back to this when I talk about episode 3, because a lot of things are revealed in episode 3. And then when the Loki variant is finally revealed, her hands are glowing green, and we hear a voice over saying, "What do you want from me? What is this about?" Which is actually Tom Hiddleston's voice, even though Loki is not speaking. So I think another one of this variant's powers is also maybe perhaps telekinesis or mind reading. But she reveals herself in a personal moment of pride for me. If you watched my episode 1 analysis, I thought that she might reveal herself to be, from the comics, Lady Loki. And although she doesn't really call herself this at all, she is a female version of Loki. And then I was also right, according to my episode 1 analysis, that she bombs the sacred timeline with all the charges she's been stealing. And on the screen we see a bunch of locations that Sylvie, who she later reveals her name to be, sent the charges to. And although it went by too quick for me to really know all the locations' names, I have a feeling she chose those locations for a reason. Then Sylvie opens up the door to the TVA and Loki follows her into it. And I'm going to quickly roll into episode 3. Because at the end of episode 2, all the TVA agents started going through those time doors to try and prune the branching timelines from each of the charges that Sylvie set off. I think the reason why Sylvie bombed the sacred timeline was to get the TVA pretty much empty and all of the guards and hunters and whatever you call them rush to fix all the branching timelines. And she does this because C20 finally tells her that the timekeepers are behind golden elevator doors.
How do I find the elevators?
They're gold.
Which we have previously seen in the TVA, which also means that the timekeepers basically are sitting in the penthouse of the TVA. They're just sitting up there, sewing or crocheting, whatever they do with the sacred timeline. And I was sort of expecting them to be like these big celestial cosmic beings up in the universe looking down on all of the different realities. But no, they're just in the TVA, in the penthouse, chilling. But another power is revealed for Sylvie, and that is that she can create illusions in someone's head based off of memories that that person has. And I'll talk about this again towards the end of episode 3. Now, as for the future consequences of this action, such as bombing the sacred timeline, I think the Multiverse of Madness is sort of going to be the movie to attempt to clean up this mess. Because although the TVA agents all got deployed to try and clip those branching timelines, I don't think that they are able to get all of them. Because as far as I'm concerned, the branching timeline can reach the red apex very quickly, and I think too many timelines started branching off, and I don't think there's enough TVA agents to clip all of them in time. As of now, it seems Sylvie bombed the timeline as a distraction so she can, raid the TVA and get to the timekeepers, but I wonder if there's also another reason, because that's a pretty big distraction and a bit of a waste of all those charges if she was only using it for distraction, and we haven't even seen the actual after effect of it yet. And I don't think Sylvie has actually ever been in the TVA before, though, because even with all of her knowledge, she doesn't realize her powers aren't going to work in the TVA, as she's surprised when she can't successfully take over one of the TVA guards. But eventually, Sylvie and Loki find themselves on Lamentis 1, and during their whole time on this planet, I keep thinking about Loki's quote from episode 2 about Loki being able to listen and exploit other people's weaknesses. And I have a feeling that this is what he's trying to do with Sylvie. He does seem to try to be helping her, but I think he's only doing that to help himself. But I think there might be something else at play here, because I always think Loki looks out for himself and himself only. That being said, though, I was getting a pretty strong vibe between Loki and Sylvie, like the romantic vibe, which would kind of make sense because I feel like it's a very low-key thing to do for a Loki to fall in love with essentially themselves. So if these two do end up together somehow, I think it would make a lot of sense, because only a Loki can love a Loki. Although technically I don't think she's a Loki, at least not in the sense of like how the other variants are more like Loki than Sylvie is. I believe that Sylvie is more of an alternate reality Loki, because she is the daughter of the frost giant Laufey, so she would be called Laufey daughter instead of Laufey son, like Loki is. But in essence, she is in no way in shape or reality the Loki we all know. And again, interesting hint about her past, as she's goading Loki about his use of magic, and he reveals that his mother taught magic to him. It's revealed that Sylvie was not taught magic by her mother, and she had to learn some of her powers on her own.
I taught
Whatever it is.
myself.
You taught yourself that magic?
Yeah, I did.
She reveals that she did know that she was adopted, and she was told this. And this makes me think that maybe Frigga wasn't her mother figure growing up. Sylvie, as far as we have seen, has had more of a dark theme than I think Loki does. Loki most definitely has done some horrible things, but I feel like he's always been more of a mischievous character. But Sylvie is more dark and a little bit more violent, I think. So that makes me wonder if maybe her mother figure was Hela, and that Hela raised Sylvie after one of her and Odin's many battles that they fought with the Valkyries, and that her and Odin sort of won Sylvie as a ward, and they decided to raise her. And we get an amazing piece of information from Sylvie that was definitely a mind-blowing moment, and that she confirms all the TVA workers were once variants themselves.
I was told that everyone who works at the TVA was created by the Timekeepers.
That's ridiculous. They're all variants, just like us.
Like in the opening scene with C20, and Sylvie is revealed to be a memory from C20's past before she started to work for the TVA. Which brings me back to her muttering, "It's all real." Her mind was blocked. Sylvie describes her mind.
Her mind was messed up, everything clouded.
So that means that C20 was muttering "it's all real" because she didn't realize that she had memories from the past. Also bringing that back to B15, the reason why she could have woken up with a frightful look on her face was because she too had a past memory shown to her by Sylvie when she was taking over her mind. And all this also means that the whole video with Miss Minutes and episode 1 was also a lie. Because that means every single variant that goes off their path becomes a TVA agent. And they get their memory wiped and they don't go back on their set path as Miss Minutes told Loki that they all would. And this sort of puts the Timekeepers on my do not like list. It just seems pretty lazy of them. And pretty malicious, I'd say too. Like, what do you want to hoard all these people for? Why can't you just create people on your own? Like, that's kidnapping, basically. I'm sure we'll find out more about it later, though. And also, I want to know what my man Mobius did to become a variant. It's either going to be something with a big plot twist, like Mobius ends up being the bad guy, or maybe Mobius became a variant by creating time travel and the Mobius strip. I said in my first analysis that the Mobius strip that Tony Stark invents to create time travel and Agent Mobius M. Mobius have the same name, and I don't think that's just a coincidence on Marvel's part. So what if however many years ago, or in the future, because time is weird, a scientist or someone of a similar nature named Mobius invented the Mobius strip, and he was not supposed to. And Ravonna says that the Avengers were supposed to go on their Infinity Stone heist and go back in time and everything. But now that we know that the Timekeepers are liars, I'm not exactly sure how 100% true that is. And finally, connecting all the things I said about the apocalypse with zero time variants in my talks of episode 2, I was confused on the whole apocalypse being able to do whatever you wanted because it gets destroyed. But I noticed a pattern in regards to all the apocalypses that the TVA and Loki have been to. And they're all natural disasters. So I think in regards to being able to do whatever you wanted in apocalypse branches is true as long as that apocalypse is going to be destroyed by natural disaster. Because imagine if they went to an apocalypse that happened to end via like an all nuclear power plant explosion or something. In theory, you could stop the power plant blowing up by, I don't know, maybe like pulling a lever, adding more coolant, however you control power plants, especially nuclear ones. I'm not an expert. And therefore, you would divert the disaster and the timeline would be safe. And that would create an alternate timeline in itself. But I think natural disasters are a lot more difficult to stop. At the end of this episode, Sylvie and Loki literally tried to do everything in their power to hijack the Ark, which was never supposed to take off in the first place. And if they did hijack the Ark, it would have altered the timeline completely. But no matter what they tried to do, they still never made it, and the Ark still got destroyed. So I really do think that Loki was correct, and if the timeline is destined to be destroyed, then no matter what happens, it will be destroyed only as long as it's destroyed by a natural disaster like the ones Loki mentioned in episode 2. So like a volcanic eruption, a tsunami, a solar flare, etc., etc. So I think it has to be a natural disaster and not a man-made apocalypse. Unless that man-made apocalypse is the thing that causes the natural disaster, like we saw in the rocks cart, because human over pollution, I'm sure, as it seemed to be more of an industrial part of the world, and all of their pollutants cause the environment to whack out. And then this episode ends on a cliffhanger with both Sylvie and Loki still stranded on Lamentis 1, a planet that is about to be destroyed. As for the future of the next episode, I think either the TVA is probably going to come and get them, they're going to track him somehow, they're going to find that they went there, or either Loki or Sylvie are currently doing some sort of enchantment or illusion to try and trick the other one. So this whole Lamentis thing might not even be real. I think it is, but just in case it isn't, because I feel like, Loki, god of trickery and mischievousness, and now there's two of them, so I'm just counting on my bases. I still can't tell what Loki's goal is. Obviously, I know he's trying to take over the TVA and get to the timekeepers, so is Sylvie, but I don't know if they're going to team up or if that's going to be, may the top person win sort of thing. Because I have a feeling that at first Loki is going to hand over Sylvie to the TVA, but that could also be a part of a larger plan that they hatched together that we don't find out until later on in the series. There's a lot of paths that this could take, and I'm not sure which ones we're going to see. Also, I've been really asking myself, how is this going to end for Loki in particular? Because technically he's dead, but now that we know that all the TVA workers were once variants, I wonder if Loki and Sylvie either voluntarily start to work for the TVA or kind of get stuck working for the TVA. Maybe their minds will also be wiped, and that would set up also a future for them in the MCU, or maybe they will implode the Sacred Timeline even more and destroy some of the Timekeepers, and then that would go into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, pretty well, I think. So I guess I'll keep watching to see. Well, guys, that was my analysis of episode 2 and 3 of Loki. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think is going on and what could happen in the future for this series as well as the MCU. So make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for my Loki reactions as well as analysis. So episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Loki have been reeled in. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.